Good morning, everyone. This is Veronica Watson with IHCDA. We've got a couple more minutes until we get started, but if someone could do me a favor and post in the Q&A, um, which should be somewhere on your screen, I believe somewhere on the top or on the right, and let me know that you can hear me. We are using completely new technology today, so it'd be really helpful to know that it is working properly. And while we wait on that, Vita, can you unmute yourself to make sure that you are also able to present as needed? All right, I see I got a couple responses in the Q&A. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. All right. Good morning, everyone. My clock says it is right at 10 o'clock, so I want to go ahead and get started. My name is Veronica Watson. I am the NAP Program Manager here at the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. Thank you all for joining us today. I'll start up front and let you all know that the system we're using for today's webinar is completely new to us, and so if we run into any technical difficulties, I do apologize, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to at least go over the slides and answer any questions that you have about the NAP closeout report. So let me pull up my presentation. I am supposed to be joined by my colleague Vita Morris-May, but she might be having some audio issues. So if she pops up at some point to let me know that she's here, don't be alarmed. That is meant to happen. But I'm going to go ahead and get started with our slideshow. It should be somewhat short, but hopefully give you guys the information that you need to do the final report required for the 2020 NAP program round. Now we do have the closeout report available. It is live. You can start filling it out. Some of you already have. To do so, you can use the link that is currently on your screen. It's also linked to our IHCDA website, the NAP webpage that hopefully you all are very familiar with. And if you still have trouble finding it, you can email us after this webinar and we can make sure that you get the right link. Now let's go ahead and get started. Just to give you a quick agenda, I want to go through a kind of a brief overview of reporting requirements in general in our NAP program. And then I'll go in a little bit deeper into the closeout report, which is the main reason that we are meeting today, and then hopefully cover any questions that you guys still have at the end of that. Now some quick housekeeping. There is a Q&A function to this system. Hopefully you all have found it. I believe it's somewhere at the top or maybe on the right side. You can post your questions in there throughout the webinar, and then at the end, I'll go ahead and make sure that all of those questions are answered or answered to the best of my ability. If we are not able to get to your question, either because I miss it, again, this is all new technology, or there's so many questions that we run out of time, please feel free to email us. You can see the email address at the bottom, nap@ihcda.in.gov. Email us directly and we will respond to you directly and make sure that any questions or concerns you have are addressed. And as I know, normally the first question I get at these things is, will this be recorded? Yes, this should be recording. I believe I got that notification, and I will download that recording and post that to our website, to the NAP webpage, along with the slides. So for whatever reason you're having issues with the system either now or halfway through, or you have a staff member that was meant to be on today or had hoped to be on today but couldn't make it, you can make this available to them in that way. So, starting with our overview of reporting requirements. Again, hopefully you all are familiar with these. These requirements are laid out in our manual as well as the contract that your executive directors all signed. But just to make sure that you're up to date on everything, I want to give this brief overview, which is that there are 3 required reports for the NAP program. The first one you all have already done. That is the 60% benchmark report. That is where you give us information on the donations that you have received in exchange for your NAP tax credits for between July 1 of last year, so till July 1, 2020, and December 31st of 2020. So that was due in January. Again, you all should have turned that in already, and it's completed in our IHCDA online system. So that was already done. The next report, which is due for many of you, not all of you, and I can get to that in a second, is our 100% benchmark report. It's basically the same report as what you did in January, except it's for donations that were that you received between January 1 of this year, so 2021, and March 31st of 2021. That is going to be due April 19th of this year. So mark that on your calendar and make sure you have that in mind, because that is due unless you distributed all of your credits last year, so by December 31st, and you reported all of them in January. If you did that, you have no further donations to report, then you don't have anything to report in this 100% benchmark report. Therefore, you don't have to submit it. But if you had any remaining credits after December 31st, whether that was 40% of your credits or 3% of your credits, and you've distributed those, then you need to report those. We need that information so that we can send that on to the Department of Revenue, and your donors can have their credits honored when they do their taxes. And again, same as the 60% benchmark report, that is done in IHCDA online. The third report, which is due for everyone, whether or not you do 100% benchmark report, whether or not you distributed all of your credits last year, whether or not you missed one or both of these benchmarks, if you distributed any credits at all, if you raised any funds from the NAP tax credits, you need to complete this third separate report, which is the expenditure closeout report. It is due September 27th of this year, and it's completed in a different system. It's completed in JOT form. And so you're going to email us if you have any issues. For our other reports, if you have issues, we've been directing you to our claims department. For this, they do not have access to the JOT form system. That is with program staff, with myself and my colleague Vita. So you're going to email the NAP email address if you have any issues with this report. Okay, so the purpose of this closeout report, as I mentioned, the benchmark reports are so that we can collect information on your donors and the donations, so that we can send that on to the Department of Revenue, and they can honor those credits when your donors do their taxes and mark that they have a tax credit from donating to you. The closeout report has a different purpose. It is to help us ensure, it's to help us know basically what you are using your funds for. You don't turn any of that information in on the benchmark report. You tell us about your donors, and that's about it. This closeout report will tell us, once you've raised those funds, what happens from that? How do you turn around and then use them? And we will we'll also compare that to what you applied with to make sure that what you told us you were going to do is actually what ended up happening. So that's important for us here at IHCDA. The information is also important because we get requests for information on this program from other state agencies and from state legislators, sometimes from other statewide partners. And so this is something that we can provide to them to show what the impact is of the basically $5 million that is raised from the NAP tax credits. And then finally, the purpose of this is so that we can get some feedback from you all. We have a couple of questions at the end of the report asking you for basically, how did the program go for you? Did you receive all of the help and all the resources that you needed to complete this program? And if not, what are things that we can do better for the upcoming program year? Okay, so some general notes on this closeout report before I get into the actual questions that we ask on it. To help clarify on the timeline, so you have until March 31st of this year to distribute all of your credits. And then you have until we kind of expect you to have spent those funds by mid to late September. So you have at least 6 months to spend the funds that you've raised. Now, the majority of you, we've already run the numbers, the majority of you have already distributed your credits in 2020. So a lot of you have 9 months or more to spend the funds that you have raised from this round of tax credits. But just know that you're going to have quite a long period in between when you have to distribute those credits, when you submit the last benchmark report to us in April, and then when we ask for this closeout report, which is to give you time to actually turn around and spend the funds and collect any data based on that. So this report should only be submitted once you have spent the funds. I know a couple of you have already submitted, or a couple of your compatriots have already submitted this report. I haven't taken a deep look at those. I'm hoping that those will reflect that they have spent their funds and they just happen to spend them very quickly. But we really need to know, what are you doing with the funds that you've raised? So please do not complete your closeout report just immediately after you've distributed all your credits. Make sure that you've actually spent the funds and have something to tell us basically on how it went. Now, the report should be on all of the NAP funds, all of the funds that you have raised. So if your award in 2020 was for $10,000 in tax credits, to distribute all of those, you should have raised $20,000 in funding. So when you're completing the closeout report, I want to know how you spent the $20,000. Please don't report on $10,000. We've had that issue in the past where an agency sees that that's their award, and so that's the amount that they report on. I want to know the total amount that you raised from distributing your credits, what you did with that, and what you were able to accomplish in your community. And again, this is a required report for all agencies if you distributed credits. The only agencies that would get a pass on not submitting this or not submitting this on time is if they distributed 0% of their credits. And I believe there's only maybe 3 or 4 agencies this year that did that. So if you're on the line, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you are not one of those that didn't distribute any credits. Even if you only end up distributing 10% of your award, that still means that you raised funds to spend on something, and I need to know what you spent those funds on and what you were able to accomplish with those funds. Now, like our benchmark reports, there's a pretty hefty consequence for not turning this report in on time. Again, this is a really important report for us to see what the impact is of the NAP program. So if we don't get that information or we don't get it in a timely manner, that can have a really negative impact on our office and on the program in general. So it's important you turn it in on time. If you're unable to do so, that sends the message to us that you're maybe unable to manage this program or manage it well. So as the current program rules stand, if you submit your report late, so past that late September deadline, you are ineligible for the subsequent NAP tax round, which in this case would be the 2022 NAP tax credit program round. If you never turn in a report, sometimes we have this happen where agencies just kind of ghost us, then you lose eligibility for 3 subsequent program rounds. So for this year, that would be for 2022, 2023, and 2024. So make sure you turn in a closeout report, and if at all possible, make sure you turn it in on time. Now, sometimes we have an issue where multiple reports are submitted. To make it easy on us to manage that, we are just going to automatically use the most recent one. So I believe last year we had an issue where some agencies would submit their report in April or May, and then would maybe forget that they submitted it, and then would submit once they started seeing the emails from us we normally send in September, that this is due, they might submit another one. If that happens, we're just going to automatically use the most recent one. So if you submit a second one in September, we would use the September and just delete the one that you had submitted originally. So keep that in mind, and if as much as possible, don't submit more than one report. Now, when you do submit it, someone at your agency should receive an emailed copy of it. We'll get into this at the when we go through the questions on the report, but I just wanted to note that here, that if whoever's submitting this doesn't receive a copy of it, email us, give us a couple days to respond. Sometimes it takes us a day or two. But we do want to make sure that you have a copy of your report. It shouldn't be something that you submit and then never see again. It's to your benefit to basically have a record of what you've told us, for yourself, and also maybe even more importantly for any new staff that come on or take on your position in the future. So just make sure that if you don't receive that you let us know and we can get you a copy of that. And then my final note, at least for this slide, is just a reminder that this is not the same as the 100% benchmark report. That's probably one of the number one misconceptions we get in this program. This is a completely separate report, and it is required. I always get a couple of questions each year from someone saying, well, I submitted my report in January saying that I distributed all my credits, so I don't have to do this, right? And the answer is no, you do need to, you need to do this. This is completely separate from any information you're giving us about your donors and the funds that you raise in exchange for that. This is you telling us what you did with the funds. So if you take nothing else from this webinar, take away that this is required. You need to complete it, and please do so by the deadline. All right, so the rest of the webinar, I'm just going to go through the report itself. I'm not going to read you guys the questions, but my main objective is to give you kind of some background and a little bit of information on what we're looking for when we ask certain questions. But before I get into that, Vita, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you figured out your technical difficulties.
I figured it out.
Can you see, are there any questions anyone has yet? If they have any questions on anything I've said so far, I'd prefer to address those now.
Okay, not on what we've said so far, but we do have 3 questions, so if you want to address one of them now.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so this first one is, can you please give an example of the kind of language required for receiving NAP gifts? Some of my donors have said that the language on our receipts was not adequate.
I'm going to ask that person email that to us. That's a slightly separate issue from the closeout report and the reporting requirements. That's a donor-specific issue. I'm happy to figure that out with you, but that needs to be handled in a separate conversation.
Okay, you can keep going. I'm going to go through these to see if there's anything. Oh, what is the earliest date that the link would be available to submit the closeout report?
The link is live now. So I provided it at the beginning of the webinar. I believe I'll have the link provided at the end as well. It is also on our webpage for NAP on the IHCDA website. If you don't know where that is, I highly recommend you become familiar with that webpage. And the easiest way to find it, the way that I always find it, is just by Googling IHCDA. You should see our logo on the slide in front of you, and then NAP. Or plus NAP. And usually the first link that appears will be a link to our webpage. And it'll be provided under the 2020 NAP program round section. And again, if you still can't find it, email us. I'll get you the link.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. All right, so like I said, I'm just going to go through the report itself. I've taken snapshots of what it will look like, what it does look like in the JotForm system. So when you first come on, you'll see at the top of the page this explanation, which provides a lot of information that I've already gone over in this webinar, but I still recommend that you read it, be familiar with it, take it in as much as possible, with probably the most important piece being that this is due September 27th of this year. So make sure you turn it in by that date. Okay, so the first piece of information, the first section that you're going to fill out is providing your general organization information, starting with your award number. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, I think most of you have become familiar with our terminology and what we're asking for when we ask for your award number, but in case you're unsure what that means, we are asking for the number that is provided with your grant agreement. So I've got a screenshot. The second screenshot on this is what your award agreement looks like at the top. You'll see an agreement number. In this case, it's 2020-NP-016. So if you don't know off the top of your head what your agreement number is, you can look on your grant agreements at the top. I believe it's also on the page that has it's either Exhibit 1 or Exhibit A, where your actual tax credit amount is provided, and where we also provide a table of reporting deadlines. It should be on that page. And then if you still can't find it, if you maybe don't have access to your grant agreement, if you don't have access to your grant agreement, email us and we'll get you a copy, because you should have that on file. But your grant number should also be provided in IHCDA online. So when you log in to do your benchmark reports, one of the things that I believe you have to click on is your actual grant agreement number. So that's another place for you to find it. If you still have trouble finding it in either of those locations, email us and we'll get that to you. It's important that you provide the correct grant agreement number. That's how we match this report up to the information you provided in your application and in the benchmark reports. So if you provide us with the wrong agreement number, that kind of messes with our system. So get familiar with your agreement number and email us if you have trouble with that. After that, you fill in just some general information about your organization, the organization's name, your CEO or ED's name, their contact information, the information for whoever is your main contact for NAP, your address, and your organization's phone number. So all pretty simple and straightforward, hopefully. Okay, now this is the question that comes after that. It comes when we start asking about the actual tax credits that you received and distributed. And this question is new for this year. So if you've done this before, just be prepared for this is going to be one of the areas that's a little bit different from previous years. And that's where we ask you if you have actually used all of the funds that you raised from distributing your credits. So again, if your award was for $10,000 in tax credits, you should have raised $20,000 in funds from your donors. So this question is, did you actually spend those $20,000? And if not, let us know how much funding that you still have to be unspent. Now, this is just for information gathering on our part. We've always, I think at IHCDA, assumed or expected that funds are spent by the time that you are performing this closeout report, but we've never specifically asked that. And just so you know, there is no consequence for you not having spent those funds. There's no way for us to claw back those funds because they didn't come from us. They came from your donors. And currently there's no you don't get points against you when you apply for new credits. We just need to know what the status is of the program in this area. Are agencies spending all their funds in the time they're given? Do we need to maybe be pushing out the closeout report or taking other measures to, to address this issue? So again, this is a new question. Keep your eye out for it, and please answer honestly. After that, we ask you for just the big reason for this report, which is what were you able to do with the funds? What were you able to accomplish? What outcomes or outputs did you have? We're asking for a couple of things here, maybe to avoid a couple of things. The first one being, as it says in the question, which is, please don't copy and paste your organization's mission statement. I've had that happen in a couple of previous reports. Please say like what you did specifically with the funds, if you built houses with it, if you provided meals at homeless shelters, if you ran a kids after school program, things like that. Please just write to that. Don't just copy and paste your general mission statement. Please also say something more than just what you were able to provide to your donors. Last year we had a couple of agencies, not many, but a couple that their answer to this question was when I asked what did you do with the funds or what were you able to accomplish, their accomplishment was that they were able to raise funds and provide their donors with tax credits, which is great. That's a big part of the program. But the main reason for having the NAP program be a thing is to provide services and maybe even make changes in the communities that you're serving or serving in the lives of the individuals that you are serving. And so that's what this question is getting at. What changes are you making in the lives of the individuals that you're serving or in the communities that you're serving in, or what basic necessities are you providing? Anything along those lines, that is what we are looking for. So any kind of data that you have would be really great to provide here. There is no requirement on the type of data that you provide. So if you have a really robust data collection system and you're able to provide some interesting information here, please do so. If you're not able to and you just have more of an anecdotal response to this, that's fine. But just provide as much data as you are able to while keeping it concise. I do have it looks like a character limit here of 200, so it's keeping it pretty short. There's about 300 of you in this program, so we don't have the capacity to read pages and pages of this for each agency. And when we pass it on to any of our state partners, we want to make it concise for them as well. So yeah, so provide what you have, make it sound good, but keep it concise. After that general statement that you provide on what you're able to accomplish, you need to identify the NAP eligible service that your project fell under. It should be what you applied for in 2020. If it is not, please email us and let us know what happened and why you had to change your plans. Again, there's no way for us to claw back any funds, so you're not going to have to return any money based on that, but we do need to know, again, it's just about us knowing how funds were being used and if there were updates based from when we made you your grant agreement and your award of tax credits. We just want to know. After that, we ask about the individuals served. So I'm asking here for a count of the number of unduplicated individuals that were served by your NAP program or programs. I'm asking for all individuals. So if NAP funds only represented, let's say, half of your program's budget, provide all of the individuals that you serve. Don't just provide the 50% that maybe NAP served directly. I want the entire program count, and I want it to be unduplicated. So if you served, I think I've got an example here. If you serve 600 individuals 4 times a year with whatever service you're providing, put 600 down as your answer. Make sure it's by individual. So if you are collecting information based on households or families or even neighborhood or community, give your best, I don't want to say guess, but basically give your best guess. So if you're doing it by families, maybe multiply it by the 2.4, I think, is the average number of individuals and families these days. If you do it by if your service is by neighborhood or community and you don't have data on individuals, I ask that you just take 10 or 15 minutes to look up the population in that particular zip code or community or neighborhood or whatever area focus that you provide your services in. Because it's really important. It's important that everyone is reporting on the same thing. We tally we basically sum the answers from all 300 of your reports, and we provide that in our annual report for our agency here, and we provide it as a report anytime we have to provide information to legislators or any other agency. So it's important that we're all reporting on the same thing. So please just provide individuals and just provide a number. I saw last year quite a few agencies would sometimes write 100 people, or they would say 50 individuals and 20 families. Again, please just put individuals and just put the number, don't put words, because basically that messes with our system and we can't include your answer with the rest of the answers that everyone else has provided. Your answer doesn't have to be exact. Like I said, there's no requirements in the data that you are collecting in the NAP program, but this is it's important because what you all are doing in NAP is wildly varied. I mean, some are working with homeless shelters or domestic violence shelters. Some are working with kids after school programs, or we've got some YMCAs in here. We're working with medical providers. It just kind of runs the whole gamut. And so this is one of the few ways that we can provide kind of a program-wide overview of what is being accomplished. So that's why it's important that we're all providing the same thing. All right, and then after that, we just get into the final few questions on the feedback portion, on how did the program go for you, and was there anything that we should have provided but different but didn't, or is there anything that you would recommend that we provide in future program rounds? And then we ask it for you to kind of rate your satisfaction. Again, that's kind of nice for us to average our scores. So we can kind of get an overview of the entire program, but we do read each individual comment. We read all of those. Vita can confirm that. We both read those. We highlighted anything that we found particularly interesting or persuasive, and it's helping us kind of build especially our communication strategy. We know the communication that we provide you is so important to what a lot of you depend on to make sure you're meeting requirements. So that's why it's the focus for these particular questions. And then finally, you get to the point where you submit. So you're going to certify and say that everything that you've provided to us in this closeout report is true, and then you're going to provide an email address. Now, this is the email address that will get the copy of this report once you hit submit. So normally it's the email address of the person that is submitting the report, but I know sometimes you've been told to enter in maybe like your boss's email address or your ED's email address. That's fine. Just make note of that, and then before you contact us for a copy of the report, make sure you ask that person. If it is not you, make sure you ask that person whether or not they've received a copy. Check their spam folder. If it's supposed to go to you and you don't receive it, check your spam folder. And if you can't find it in your inbox or your spam folder, then go ahead and email us and we'll make sure that you get a copy. And it's especially important that you receive a copy, not just for good record keeping, that's very important, but it's really important because if we turn around and tell you that we didn't get it or we didn't get it on time when you apply for 2022 credits, if you can't show documentation that says that you did submit it, i.e. you can't provide us with this copy in an email format with a date that comes before the deadline, then we have to go by our system and by our records, and we will deem that you are ineligible. However, if I email you and say you're ineligible for 2022 because you didn't submit this report by September 27th, and you're able to forward me the email from JotForm showing that yes, you did, it shows that you did it in July, then I can reverse that decision and you can be eligible for 2022 credits. That has happened once or twice. It doesn't happen very often, but that is the only thing that we will take. Sometimes when we run into this issue where someone doesn't submit on time and we deem them ineligible and they try to appeal that decision, they try to show us screenshots, or they try to show us like something that they copy and pasted into Word, and that's just not something that we can accept. We can only accept the email from the JotForm system. So make sure you have that, and if you don't, contact us and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. All right, so that is it for the closeout report. It's hopefully fairly simple. There's not a lot of questions. We've cut back even from what we had in previous years to try and make this as easy and simple a process as possible. But I know even as we try to make things simple, they're still somewhat complicated and maybe confusing. So Vita, are there any additional questions?
Here's one just to make sure everybody understands. I know you may have covered it, but for the second report, what is the timeline for donations? Just January 1st, 2021 or from July 1st, 2020?
Okay, so this, so they're asking about the 100% benchmark report, which is different from the closeout report, and it's the report that is due next, and it is for donations from January and through March of this year of 2021. You should have already reported your July to December donations. Because we need to have already sent that. We already sent that report on. Anyone that you reported for that July to December timeline, we've already sent their information to DOR. If you have someone that you didn't include in that report, you need to contact us so that we can get that information to DOR ASAP. But that is why the 100% benchmark report is for the next chunk of time, for January to March. But again, that's for the 100% benchmark report, which is separate and different from the expenditure closeout report I just went over. All right, any other questions?
Okay, they may be referenced to the closeout report, so I'll read this one. What if the pandemic has impacted the work we're proposing to do for NAP?
So if it's impacted what you proposed in 2020, that's understandable. We ask that you just email the NAP email and let us know, talk to us about what you're thinking. We do need to make sure that what you plan to do is still in line with the NAP program. If it's not, that might lead to some larger conversations. But just so you all know, this program comes from Indiana legislation, so we do have to try and stick to the program rules as strictly as possible, as directed by legislation. So that's why it's really important that we ensure that you are using the funds for an approved activity. Now, if the activity needs to change, that can happen in any year. We know that things just happen, but we know that is especially true for 2020 and 2021. So just reach out to us and so we can have that conversation. I've had that a couple of times over the years with agencies, and it usually ends up being fine. If they have something else in mind that is a NAP approved activity, and there are, I think, like 15 approved activities, so it'd be, I think, maybe a little difficult for you to do something outside of an approved activity, but just contact us and we can have that conversation.
Okay, here's one, I think, since it's related to the second half. Are we still able to raise NAP funds after January 1st, 2020? I thought I saw something that said the credits were oversold and none are left for the 2021 portion of the 2020-21 allocations.
So they could be asking one of two things, and I'll address both of them. If you had credits remaining after December 31st, if you did not distribute all of your original allocation, which was provided, I believe the contracts went out in June of last year, and dated to start July 1 of last year. If you did not distribute all of your credits, yes, you need to distribute those credits by March 31st of this year. If you are asking if there are additional credits available, that was something that we did in previous program rounds. If unused credits, if there was a certain number of unused credits, we made those available to certain agencies. If we did that, then you would have received a grant amendment, and then would have had to distribute those credits by March, those additional credits by March 31st. We did not do that this year. There were no additional credits made available to the network. So any credits that you have to distribute come from your original allocation from last July. And yes, you do have until March 31st to distribute those and remain eligible for the 2021 program round. If you do not meet that benchmark, you can still distribute those credits through June of this year. But if you do that, you will not be eligible for 2021 credits. You need to distribute your credits, all of your credits, 100% by March 31st, and report on them by April either 17th or 19th in order to be eligible for the 2021 program round. And if you're still have questions about that or somewhat confused on whether or not how this impacts your agency, just email us and we can walk you through it.
Okay, this is an expenditure question, so slightly. It says we have 2 years to spend the funds, correct? With COVID, many of our programs were closed for a period of time, and we have not spent our full award amount.
No, the expectation is that you spend them by September of this year. If you do not, just go to that when we ask for how much have you actually spent, or when I ask, have you spent all of your funds, say no, and then put down how many funds you still have left to spend. But the expectation for NAP is that funds are spent by September.
Okay. Here's one. This is the first time this has happened. Oops, what happened to my question? It just switched on me. Okay. Sorry, it just lost it. Okay, so let me see if there was basically the question was trying to say that this is the first time that I've had trouble selling my NAP credits. If I can't sell them all by March 31st, what will happen?
According to current program rules, you would lose eligibility for the 2021 program round. If that is something that you were concerned about, email us and we can talk through it. I'd much rather we get that question from you directly and you raise that possibility to us directly now before the benchmark report or the benchmark deadline of March 31st and before the reporting deadline in April. And we're much more likely to be lenient if you warn us beforehand than we are if you wait until the day after the report is due, which is often what ends up happening. A lot of times a decision based on that does not go in the organization's favor. We have been more lenient this year because of COVID, but it works much more in your favor if you're able to tell us beforehand. And also, if you do that, give us an indication of when you believe you would be able to distribute your credits. Note, okay. I'll add to that that you have a hard deadline of June 30th, because the state tax credits go by the state fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th. After June 30th, you lose access to those credits. We will not be able to honor any credits that you distribute from 2020 past that deadline. So just know that that's something that's out of our control. That's based on legislation. So we might be flexible with the eligibility rule. That's an IHCDA rule, but the rule on you losing credits, any remaining credits after June 30th, that's a state rule we can't mess with.
Okay, here's one related to the closeout report. What time period do we report on for individuals served?
Good question. I would say use the program year that the NAP funds went to support. So hopefully you use your NAP funds in one program year. That would be the simplest way, whether that's you follow the same July to June program year, or maybe you use January to December and you distribute all your funds really quickly and you put it to the program round in 2020, or maybe you're going to distribute all of them and then hold them and spend them in 2021. Just go off whatever program year that the NAP funds went to support. Now, if they went over multiple program years, I would say email me and we can figure out. I'll have to think through that a little bit more if that's the case, if you're using NAP funds across multiple of your program years. But I think it'd just be easiest to use the NAP funds, assign them to one of your program years, whether that's January to December of 2020, January to September of 2021, or maybe July 1 of 2020 to June 30th of 2021, whatever your program year runs on, do it based on that.
Here's one. So it says, so all the info about the zones are no longer needed. I'm not sure.
Correct. That's what we ask in the application is what was the economically disadvantaged area. Most of the services in NAP have to be done in an economically disadvantaged area. So in your application, we ask for what that area is. We might have asked for that in previous closeout reports, but in an attempt to simplify things, that was probably that might have been one of the questions that I cut for this year. So no, I would ask, that would be a great thing to include in your description of what you accomplished, is that your target neighborhood or community or population. That would be a great thing to call out in your description of what you accomplished. But that would be the only thing. And you can, in that, you can use whatever language that you normally refer to. You don't have to refer to an opportunity zone or a qualified census tract. I know that's what we require for NAP, but when talking about your accomplishments, you can just keep it to whatever the area or the language that you normally use for whatever program NAP supports.
Okay, this one, we've had multiple, so I'll just have you go ahead and address it. It said, when will the next NAP round start?
Right now, I have tentatively scheduled the manual and the application to be made available the same day that the 100% benchmark report is due. So that is April 19th is my tentative date to make that available for you all. That has not been solidified, but definitely be checking our website if you haven't received any emails. We try to send out emails through our listserv and then to contacts directly from previous program rounds, but sometimes things just don't go through, staff turnover, or sometimes firewalls keep that stuff from getting to the right person. So if nothing else, be checking our NAP, our IHCDA webpage for NAP on the government website.
Okay, here's a different question that we probably could address. It says, why aren't deallocated NAP credits reallocated to organizations having sold 100% of credits by 12/31?
Good question. That's what for those of you who aren't familiar, that is what was the program rule previously, and we still do have that as a possibility. But we were finding, it was 2 program rounds ago, and then we took a look at this last time, that basically the numbers weren't, the cost benefit was starting to become a little unbalanced, because so many of you were getting to the point where you were distributing 100% of your credits. I think that was somewhat uncommon a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when that rule was first getting implemented. But like for this 2020 program round, I think of like the almost 300 of you, I believe we got right around 200 distributed 100% of your credits by December 31st. So that's a lot of agencies that would be eligible for credits. But this year we also had a record low amount of credits that would have been eligible for deallocation. So those that are eligible for deallocation come from any agency that did not distribute at least 60% of their credits. We still honor any credits that they did distribute, and sometimes that's 100%. Sometimes the reason someone would be eligible for deallocation and ineligible for a next program round is because they did distribute 60% or in some cases 100%, but they didn't turn in their report on time. And we still have to honor the credits that they basically promised their donors, even if they're no longer eligible for the next program round. So with all that being considered, there was a record low amount of tax credits available to agencies. And so we would have been doing over 200 grant amendments for for tax credits that would have been, I think it was like $300. And the amount of time and effort that we would have had to put into that, and also to ensuring that those 200 that currently don't have to do a 100% benchmark report, making sure that they do, and then if they don't, knowing that they are ineligible for the next round. There's just a lot that would have gone into that, and to us it wasn't something that we could spend that time and effort on. Now, if we take a look at that each year, we haven't done the reallocation in the last 2 rounds. If for whatever reason it starts to become more balanced, where more credits are available and or less agencies are eligible for the reallocation, we are very open to ensuring that those credits and those funds are made available to agencies. We don't like leaving money on the table. It's just when it's such a small percentage of the overall program budget, then that's when we deem it where we skip that process. So that's what we did this year. So if that trend continues, it is likely that we will not be doing reallocation in the future, but it's like I said, it's something that we look at each year, and if things start to change, we're open to revisiting that policy. Hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully it's understandable. Any other questions?
Maybe just a couple more just to highlight. Someone said, it's a closeout report still due by 5 p.m. on September 27, 2021?
Yes. Here are the deadlines.
Yeah. And final is just webinar slides will they be available?
Yes, on our NAP webpage.
I think that is it.
Okay, awesome. Good questions. Hopefully we got to everyone's. If for whatever reason we didn't, either tech issues meant that we accidentally skipped over it, or you weren't able to find the Q&A area, or you might think of something like 2 seconds after we end the webinar. If any of that happens, you can always email us. The email address is at the bottom of the slide that's currently on your screen. We're happy to talk through anything. Highly, highly, highly recommend, if not plead with you, to contact us early. Please do not wait until September 27th to attempt this report and then let us know that you're having issues. Please don't wait until April 19th to submit your benchmark report and then contact us and let us know you're having issues. There are so many of you that if even 10% do that, and sometimes we have that happen, that can be incredibly difficult for our staff to get to see everyone, to get to everyone in a timely manner. It's very nerve-wracking for us, and I know it's very nerve-wracking for you if you were waiting for us to answer you in 5 minutes time. That's just very rarely going to happen. So do things early, please. Please submit your benchmark report early. If you're having issues and you let us know before the deadline, we can basically provide you a waiver, so that if we're not able to fix your issue by the deadline and you can only submit like the day or 2 after, that's fine because you let us know beforehand. So it's definitely to your benefit, definitely to our benefit, just to everyone's benefit that you do this early and then let us know if you have any issues. And so, like I mentioned, the email address is at the bottom where you can contact us and we can help hopefully address any issues that you have. And I will end and let you all, again, let you know that the link for the closeout report is live. It's on your screen now. It is on the NAP webpage on the IHGDA website. Again, if you can't reach it, let us know. But go ahead and fill that out if you have spent the funds you've distributed from your NAP tax credits. So with that, I will go ahead and attempt to end this thing. Thank you all for attending. Like I mentioned, it'll be around mid-April when we will most likely make the manual and application for 2021 available, and expect a webinar the week or two after that happens, so we can talk through what we're expecting on that application. So with that, I'll go ahead and end this thing. Contact us if you have any questions, and have a good rest of your day.